You're listening to the latest dose of Bipolar Recorder. This podcast may cause dizziness and blurred vision. Enjoy.
Welcome back to Bipolar Recorder. This is Hunter Keegan, back with a new episode for you. It's kind of a rainy, gray evening where I'm at right now. Maybe you can hear the sound of the rain in the background as I'm recording this. Puts you in kind of a reflective headspace, and it's just one of those days where I'm kind of in my apartment wondering what I should be working on. So I decided I would record the intro for this episode. That's my productive thing that I'm doing today. How about that? Anyhow, we had a returning guest for today's show, and you may remember Stu from episode 5. He told us all about a depressive episode that he's going through right now, and he and I stayed in touch after that episode was recorded, episode 5. And Stu decided that he wanted to come back on to talk some more about mental health topics. So we chose 3 discussion topics for the episode. The discussion topics were psychosis, cannabis, and medication changes. And it was a really good conversation. I got a chance to talk a little bit about my own experiences, more so than I normally do during these interviews or conversations or what have you. So that was kind of fun. I hope you all enjoy this one, and thanks again for listening to Bipolar Recorder. Stu is back. He has rejoined Bipolar Recorder for a second time. And Stu, how have you been lately? How have you been since the last time we recorded? I think it's been about 3 weeks now.
Has it been that long? Wow. Yeah, I've been low still. Not as low as maybe when I spoke to you. It was interesting listening back, actually, sort of as reference, because apart from speaking to a therapist and my partner, it's, it's sort of internalized a lot of it. So I still say the same. It's the mornings that are killing me. I just having horrible nightmares and then waking up feeling extremely low. But I think that's because I was manic for so long.
Yeah. So now you're kind of hitting that depression wall and feeling more lethargic and down.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Sort of almost crave and miss feeling manic.
Yeah.
Because there's no doubt in that.
That's definitely really common. I think in one of our offline conversations, you were mentioning that you think your medication is starting to help a little bit. Do you still feel that way, or has that kind of passed?
I think the Buspirone I need to come off of. I think the Buspirone is having I think that worked for a while for the anxiety, and now I could almost either do without it. So I'm scaling that back now. I'm coming off Buspirone and slowly, so I've taken it from 45 milligrams to 30 milligrams, so 2 tablets 3 times a day. And I definitely feel a little bit more not as blunted and stunted. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you talk to your doctor about that, or did you just okay, cool.
Yeah, I did. Don't worry, I'm not.
Well, a lot of people will just kind of self-experiment with medications, which tends to not work out very well. So I was just curious.
I had a go at that I'd gone up to 2 milligrams of risperidone a day, and I tried to stop the risperidone, and I felt like panicky and ecstatic and depressed and like really, really odd, So yeah, anyone listening, don't try it. The Buspirone, I spoke to my GP who prescribed it because it wasn't prescribed by a psychiatrist. So for now, I felt like it was sort of, because I read somewhere that Buspirone can cause nightmares or sleep disturbances, and I'm definitely getting sleep disturbances and nightmares. So
okay, interesting.
if it stops that, I don't know. I was on quite a high dose. I was on the highest dose you can be of that. So
Okay.
no, I don't know. You sort of get into. I don't know if you feel the same. You get into this sort of situation when it's almost like you don't know the level of the waves. Do you know what I mean? It's like you don't know whether it's the illness or the medication, and
Yeah.
yes.
And sometimes, like we've been saying, the medications can make the illness worse in some ways if there's bad side effects. Other times it improves things. It's kind of like a chicken and egg scenario sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard to be. What you'd like to do, or what I'd like to do, is come off it all and see where I'm at, because I went on it when psychotic. So because I was in a manic phase, as I went on to the medication, I had to go on it because I was becoming dangerous to myself and other people. But I think once you're on that journey, it's very hard to trust it all. Do you know what I mean? Because you're sort of at the mercy of the meds and the doctors then, and appointment times and all the rest of it, and the politics involved with it can get quite choppy.
Yeah. Are you still writing about these experiences right now?
Bits.
Is that helping?
I think it must do to a certain extent. I don't know. As I say, I'm doing this with you last time and listening back, because you're not really aware of how you're speaking or what you're saying a lot of the time and your tone. So I think it was interesting to me to hear the way I was speaking and how I was. Do you know what I mean, during that, and then obviously compared to how I was each week after it and times in between.
That's interesting. Was there anything that stood out to you about like what you were saying when you listened back through the other episode?
What fascinates me is how I can articulate it all very concisely, but feel completely terrible at the same time. It's like tripping, and it feels very, it's almost like when you're tripping, where it's all going on underneath the surface. So I think what's interesting is the way that when asked to focus, or when needing to focus, when you're with another person or you're doing something, a constructive thing, you're able to put it all to one side and almost rise above it. But yeah, I don't know. As I say, it seems to be part of one whole thing, going back to the psychosis and the mania, and it's trying to see how that fits together rather than viewing it as independent things. Do you know what I mean? Rather than saying, oh, I was psychotic, or I was anxious, or I was depressed, it's seen as a whole encompassed thing that is helpful.
Cool.
I think that's where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always kind of trippy to listen back through recordings you've done. When I've been on other podcasts, I always get really anxious for the waiting for them to go online so I can listen back through what I said, because when you're in the moment, you almost don't realize or don't remember some of the things that you've been saying. So it's always interesting to listen back through them once they're out. I'm kind of in the same boat when it comes to that. So like other podcasts that I've been on, I do like to listen back through them and just kind of like hear myself and be like, well, did this make sense? Did that make sense? Was I articulating this correctly? Blah, blah, blah. So
it's I think it's because when you're suffering with your mental health, everything's so fragmented. Do you know what I mean? Everything is everything's split up into minutiae of like seconds or minutes or hours or days, and it's very hard to get that long view over things. So I think it's interesting how well you can cope. Do you know what I mean? That's why I think sometimes it's frustrating with friends and family and relatives that they don't understand. It's because you're putting on such a good front. You're putting on such a sort of pretense to try and get through. But obviously with what we were doing, I put on a pretense of feeling okay enough to talk, but talking about what is wrong. So it's interesting in that respect, I think, because I'm usually locked into a battle minute by minute in my head. Do you know what I mean? Like, I should go and kill myself now. I should go and kill myself. Do you know what I mean? This constant. I was having a nightmare the other night and I felt like I was in hell. I can't really describe the nightmare, but I woke my partner up and said, God, I just had a nightmare, like I was in hell. And then the instant thought was, I should go and hang myself. And it's like,
Wow.
But it's because I don't know. It's a symptom, isn't it? It's like seeing it as a symptom, seeing it as part of illness, and seeing it as part of something separate to actually who you are.
Yeah, they call it intrusive thoughts.
Fucking they are intrusive.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're super bad. I have a lot of problems with intrusive thoughts too, even after being relatively stable for a fairly long period of time now. Like intrusive thoughts, they come out of nowhere. They can be really upsetting, like you were talking about with like the ones that are like, oh, go hang yourself or whatever. They can be really upsetting and distressing. So I hear you. I mean, you're definitely not alone with that type of symptom. Also,
but that's why being psychotic is so it's so tantalizing in a way. It's because you don't care about any of that. I mean, I even if you were to have the thought, and I have had suicidal thoughts while I was psychotic, but it was almost like confident. It's like this sort of, I'm going to go and kill myself now. Do you know what I mean? And then everything will be okay.
mm-hmm.
It's more part of the plan rather than an intrusive thought. And that's what I sort of, it sounds terrible, but missed. Do you know what I mean? I missed that sort of flight of fancy and that fast thought and the, not feeling doubtful. You know what I mean? That what you're thinking or feeling is right or wrong. It's like, it's absolutely certain. There's no other fucking thing than what you're saying and doing at that moment.
Yeah, I think when you're in a depressed episode, the mania does sound a lot more tantalizing. But of course, mania and especially psychosis can become extremely destructive in of themselves. And then you're like, once you get to that point, you're like, oh man, I wish I could take this down a few notches, but you can't unless you're, taking medication. And
I read in your book when you checked into the hotel and they didn't have your booking, and you got quite aggressive. And having spoken to you by text and on the phone and on this, I know you're not like that. So that jumped out straight at me. Like, yeah, he definitely was psychotic then. He's definitely manic, because there's almost this like certainty that like, where's my fucking booking? None of the airs or graces are there. It's like there's only what you're doing that's important.
Yeah, that was definitely a feeling of grandiosity that I had in that moment. Stu's talking about, there's a scene in my book that happened when I was traveling through Austin, Texas a few years ago, and I had accidentally booked a room at a pretty swanky hotel in downtown Austin. I was using one of those discount room finder apps on my cell phone. And these guys at the hotel didn't have my room ready, and they were kind of giving me the runaround. And I actually confronted them about it, and it got pretty tense. I'm not like Stu was saying, I'm not really an aggressive person, but when you get into that mindset where you think you're flying on top of the world and no one else is on your level,
that's what I love. That's what I love. I love that feeling. But
yeah, but it also gets so embarrassing when you look back on it. Like when I think back about that experience at the hotel, I'm like, wow, that is so like out of character for me. Those people probably thought I was just being a total asshole, Yeah,
well, that I woke up one morning and decided that the way that I could feel better, and the way that I could end the pandemic and the political melee that's going on in the West, particularly in the UK and America, was for everyone to change their name to Boris Johnson. So I emailed everyone with the deed poll, which is like this site, and told them that they must change the name to Boris Johnson. Now that's very hard to explain when you come down from why you've decided that the way to stop all the political corruption is to change your name to either Boris Johnson or Donald Trump. I just love the idea of everyone being Donald Trump or Boris Johnson, just like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I just completely and utterly love the idea and thought, that's amazing. Yeah, the way to stop this political corruption is for us to change our name to the prime minister or the president's name.
Yeah, I mean, if only it was that simple, that would be awesome.
It was that simple at that point. For me, it was absolutely. I didn't understand why.
You're like, I solved it.
Yeah, that sounds like bingo. Here we go, easy. And I even said, you could change your name back afterwards.
Once everything passes over. Oh man, that is funny. It's like you got to have kind of a sense of humor about it at a certain point when you think back on those sorts of things. Otherwise, it's just like, oh my god. So I hear you. So we've mentioned psychosis a couple of times. We actually had a couple of topics that we wanted to specifically touch on today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our psychotic stories. But before we go too much further, I actually wanted to read the definition of psychosis that I found on the National Institute of Mental Health's website, because psychosis is something that's come up in the show quite a few times now, but I don't know if I've ever read the formal definition for it. So just bear with me here for like 2 seconds. I'm just going to read verbatim from the National Institute of Mental Health's website. So it says, the word psychosis is used to describe conditions that affect the mind, where there has been some loss of contact with reality. When someone becomes ill in this way, it is called a psychotic episode. During a period of psychosis, a person's thoughts and perceptions are disturbed, and the individual may have difficulty understanding what is real and what is not. Symptoms of psychosis include delusions, false beliefs, and hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that others do not see or hear. Other symptoms include incoherent or nonsense speech and behavior that is inappropriate for the situation. A person in a psychotic episode may also experience depression, anxiety, sleep problems, social withdrawal, lack of motivation, and difficulty functioning overall.
Yeah.
So that's psychosis for you.
The one thing I remember that is, as you were speaking then, that was marked is because it says detachment from reality. It felt almost like I'd entered reality. I wasn't detached from reality. I'd rediscovered the real reality. And with that, marked things like I could see symbols and signs all over the place. Numbers meant a lot. The number 11 is a big one for me, which is funny because our last podcast was on the 11th, and it was an hour and 11 minutes long, which I just ignored because I thought, I'm not looking at that. I'm not going to.
Weird.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Well, the name of the album of the band that was in was 1111. Because I gave up drinking on the 11th to 11th 2001, which is another story. But yeah, it feels like you've rediscovered reality. And I used to have this smell. There's a smell that is a made up smell. It smells like burning, and I could smell it everywhere. I was constantly going, what's that smell? What's that smell?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had that.
Yeah, it's called an olfactory hallucination, and I've never experienced that, but other people have. Clearly, you have. So yeah.
It was constant. Like I could smell. I was like, what's that smell? And it wasn't unpleasant. It's akin to probably incense or weed or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Quite strong smell, but
like a pungent odor.
Yeah, and it would pass. It would almost be like, what? Who's burning what? But yeah, detachment from reality. That although that's the definition for me, it feels more like when I was psychotic, and I have been psychotic in the past. It feels like I've re-arrived at reality. Do you know what I mean? I've like, this is how it's meant to be.
Yeah, I think it feels like hyper reality sometimes. Like you're just so in the moment, and there's all these strange things happening, and your brain is trying to process it all at once. And it feels like you've discovered like a new dimension or something, and you're like, oh, everyone else is just missing out on this or whatever. And of course, it's a dimension that's been created due to neurological misfirings in your brain. So yeah, it's reality in a sense, but not other people's reality. And that's what leads to problems.
It feels ordered as well, because at the moment I'm being very depressed. Everything feels messy. I'm like back to feeling like the house is a mess, and I feel a mess, and you just feel irritated by everything, and nothing's inspiring. Do you know what I mean? So the opposite, or almost to that, feels like psychosis. Do you know what I mean? The opposite to that is everything's ultra ordered, everything's laid out for you. It's like again, in your book, I remember reading the places you go seem to be the most psychotic places you could visit. It's almost like unknowingly you would visit. I mean, you only have to go to Vegas and it would have been done. You're
Yeah.
like visiting these very psychotic places.
When you say psychotic places, what exactly do you mean?
Noisy and light and music and busy and burnt into the public psyche as well. Do you know what I mean? Places, you know, like London is, or like New York is. Do you know what I mean? You going to Austin, Texas, and where else do you went to?
New Orleans was another one.
To me, Austin, Texas, and New Orleans just seem like the most psychotic, best places to be psychotic.
New Orleans is awesome. I have nothing bad to say about New Orleans. I don't know if you've ever been, but yeah, that is a really, really cool, vibrant, active city. And at the time I was there, back in 2015, early 2015, I was still drinking at that time. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, there's no open container laws. Liquor is super cheap. Everyone, it's a very like artsy, alternative kind of social environment over there. So it just feels like everyone's on kind of a unique wavelength, and it's very cool. But actually, that segues really nicely into what I wanted to talk about on my end, which are some personal examples of psychosis. I wrote down a couple of incidents over here that I'm reading back over right now. And a lot of them did begin during that road trip in January of 2015. So that's when I drove from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans, which is about 1,000 miles. And when I was on the way to New Orleans, I started experiencing symptoms of mania. So mostly like rapid thoughts, rapid speech, circular ways of thinking, difficulty communicating with other people because I was just acting like such a weirdo that no one wanted anything to do with me. Like, I would be at a gas station and try to ask for directions, and people would just be like, get out of here.
Yeah.
So I was encountering these symptoms of mania. And then by the time I got to New Orleans, I decided that I was going to keep driving further and further. There was a friend of mine who lived in Montana in those days, which is about a 1,500-mile drive from New Orleans. It's on the opposite side of the country, basically.
Yeah.
New Orleans is all the way south. Montana is pretty much all the way north. And so anyway, I'm at New Orleans. I decide that I'm going to keep driving to Montana. And to get there, you have to drive through Texas first. So I drove through Austin. I had the incident at the hotel that I was describing earlier. Definitely feeling very above people, feeling very high on my own energy, I guess. And by the time I left Austin and was driving through West Texas, I was probably about 2.5 or 3 weeks into this road trip. And I started getting this feeling that I was under surveillance. And I had no reason to think this because I wasn't really doing anything illegal. I was just in a really weird state of mind. But as I was driving through Texas, which, by the way, massive state, takes forever to drive through. I think it took me I had to break it up into a couple of days just because the state is so massive. But I would be driving, and I thought that I was being stalked by unmanned aerial vehicles, drones. I was convinced that the FBI or CIA were trying to fuck with me. Again, no logical basis for that.
Yeah.
I thought that my cell phone calls were being monitored, which I guess technically they are by the NSA. But yeah, it was stuff like that. So I started getting really, really, really paranoid due to these delusions. And they kept getting worse and worse. And by the time I had made it to Wyoming, right on the border of Montana, I was like fully losing my shit. And I was like freaking out because of just this weird thing that had happened on the way up to Wyoming. And I pulled over at a gas station and I walked inside and I just started rambling to these people in there. about how there were government vehicles everywhere and there was all this crazy shit happening and how I was being followed and things of this nature. And it was so strange. And this is more of like just a weird anecdote. But when I was in that gas station, there was an old guy there, probably in like his 60s or 70s. And he actually listened to what I was saying and he followed me back to my car, which startled me. And he started talking to me about what I had just been rambling about. And he started telling me all of this stuff about how there actually were a lot of government vehicles in that area because Dick Cheney, who is a former CIA director, former vice president of the United States, he owns a lot of land out there. So I ran into this like older dude who was actually validating a lot of those erroneous beliefs that I had. And it like confirmed to me that I had been right all along, even though, of course, it was just a strange coincidence.
Well, he's a conspiracy theorist favorite as well because he owned Halliburton and he was behind the whole war on terror. And yeah, so you just unfortunately bumped into one of them.
Yeah, he was like, he was telling me all about how there's Secret Service vehicles that are stationed around. This was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Right near Yellowstone Park. And he was talking about how there's all these vehicles around and the satellite GPS that I was using in my car was a way that I could be tracked and all this other stuff. And I was just like, holy shit. So anyway, that's an example of a delusion. And then to move into an example of actual hallucinations, I had some experience. Oh, by the way, do you have any delusional stories before I continue too much further?
With the one that I wrote about recently is early on in the pandemic, March 2020. It sort of took off, the pandemic, and lockdown happened in the UK, and it was all getting pretty crazy. I was very scared of COVID, but I started to become hypermanic, manic, I don't know, pressured speech, grandiose, the whole lot. I was out in the back garden and I looked up and it happened to be a completely waned moon. So there was no moon, and I'd never really paid any attention, being in a band for years and touring. I'd never really looked up at the sky for years or thought about it. So there I am, and I look up at the moon and there's no moon. So I put my cigarette out and run in and say, you won't fucking believe this, the moon's gone now. Fucking COVID, now the moon's gone. So I run upstairs to my son, who's 12, and I burst in his room and go, Sonny, guess what? And he's like, what? And I'm like, the moon's gone now. And he's like, oh God. And just like sort of confirms it for me because he's 12. So, and then I go back downstairs and my partner's Googling it and finds out it's the cycles of the moon. It's like, because it was such a clear night and I couldn't see the moon. Mm-hmm. I really believe the moon had been taken or flown away and yeah, it started to, that sort of cascade a whole load of other thoughts that I was in some sort of alternate reality or real reality as I now saw it. I don't know if you count it as a delusion or psychosis, but
it's so strange how realistic those thoughts feel in the moment too. Like thinking back on it, it's like, yeah, that's totally ridiculous. How could someone steal the moon, or how could the moon just suddenly disappear? But like I've thought way crazier stuff when delusional too. I mean, yeah. It gets fucking wild.
It's the depth of the feeling you can't get across. Like what we're both trying to do is describe that certainty. It's almost like that gambler's certainty. Like someone who's like 10 grand down, they'll keep going gambling, but they'll be certain. I was as certain as a gambler, place it on my thought. I'm certain my thought is right. I'm certain the moon's gone, and I'm certain that has a whole load of it intimates or indicates a whole load of other things that are both exciting and terrifying. But it's hard to explain how certain. It's like when you're tripping. It's really like when you're tripping. And you'll see spaceships. I remember one time I was tripping when I was younger, and I could see the contrails off a plane, mm-hmm. and I got it in my head that a nuclear war had broke out. So I ran up to a couple of hitchhikers and went, "Look, nuclear war started. They're tridents."
And they're like, "Great, this kid is on acid right now."
Yeah, Well, no, they looked for a second. This is the problem with interacting with other people. They looked for a second, looked a little bit concerned, and you start to realize that, you know, a lot of what you base reality on is what other people confirm or deny to you, and that's scary to me, because what can you trust? You know what I mean? And then you get into, especially in that state, when you're in that sort of state, it's like, well, maybe the moon has gone, maybe the government are following you, maybe Dick Cheney has got real interest in my trip from Texas to New Orleans to Wyoming. You know, he might do. I'm doing a very important thing here.
Yeah.
And it all sort of stacks. It stacks in a way that, I don't know, slots together and makes sense. I always think of, have you seen the John Lennon documentary, Imagine?
I feel like I have, but it's been a while.
There's a famous scene where he's in Tattenhurst, I think it is. Tattenhurst, his manor, his like mansion. And they find someone, an American guy.
Oh, yeah, the like heroin addict who was living in his yard.
Yeah, who believed that he'd written all the songs about him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, well, that's about me. And it, you know, you say, boy, you're going to carry that weight. You know, who were you thinking about when you wrote that? And John says, I don't know. I was thinking about Yoko or Paul. And he said, well, I didn't write it. Paul wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at best, maybe I'm thinking I'm having a shit. But this kid just looks completely nonplussed, as if, well, no, you wrote that about me. And that's the essence of it for me. It's like, everything is about you, and everything is pointed at you, and everything is coming from you.
Yeah.
But there's a look on his face that just, if anyone listening wants to look it up, yeah, if you go to the documentary and find that little footage.
Hey, this is Hunter interrupting my own podcast because I had some additional information on this subject that I wanted to share with everyone. Because I did a little bit more research about this scenario after the show was over, and I realized that the guy in the video actually has a name, and there's a little bit of backstory about him. So the guy who was living on John Lennon's property was actually a 23-year-old American Vietnam veteran named Kurt Claudio, and he had traveled all the way to John Lennon's estate in the summer of 1971 in order to meet him. And I actually got some of the audio from this interaction, and I wanted to share it with you. During the recording, you can hear John Lennon and Yoko Ono speaking with Kurt about his, psychotic experience. In the audio clip, you'll hear John Lennon kind of trying to talk Kurt down a little bit. Lennon explains that his songs had nothing to do with Kurt personally, but Kurt doesn't believe it at first. So I'll let the audio speak for itself, and then we'll jump back into the conversation with Stu.
If we met, I'd know, just by reading.
But know what?
If what I was thinking was true.
Or what is it true?
Well, I guess not.
Right, I'm just a guy, man.
But it all fits.
Anything fits, if you're tripping off on some trip, anything fits,
Remember that one, you can radiate everything you are, you can penetrate anywhere you go?
Yeah.
Syndicated. Yeah.
That was just having fun with words.
I sort of the syndicate.
Radiate was, she wrote that. Radiate Syndicate. I was just having fun with words. It was literally a nonsense song,
I wouldn't tell you unless,
Dylan does that. Anybody does it, They just take words and you stick them together, and it's like throwing the I Ching or something. You just see what happens. You take a bunch of words, you throw them out, and see if they have any meaning. Some of them do, some of them don't.
Remember old Hare Krishna has nothing on you?
Yeah, well, he don't. Yeah. You're it. See, that last album of mine was me coming out of my dream.
Seems like it could have been different.
What could have?
Well, before that last album, the way it built up.
But that was, to me, it was just a hallucination, a dream.
It is now, yeah. 'Cause it's over.
Right. You can last your whole life on that dream, And then it's all over.
You weren't thinking of anyone in particular when you were singing all that.
How could I be? How could I be thinking of you, man?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I don't care me, but it's all somebody.
I'm thinking about me, or at best Yoko, if it's a love song. You know, and I think about an audience in general. You know, if I'm singing Old Hare Krishna, Got Nothing on You, I'm sort of talking to any old friends who've been listening to what we were saying and saying, look, well, I think it's a lot of bullshit now. You know, let's forget it. You know, and that, as far as I'm concerned, you know, and but that's it. I'm basically singing about me. I'm saying, you know, I had a good shit today, and this is what I thought this morning, and you know, and I love you, Yoko, whatever. I'm singing about me and my life, you know, and if it's relevant for other people's lives, that's all right.
Fascinating because there's a look on his face of he can't believe that John Lennon is stood in front of him, but on the other hand, he's not confirming what he believed, which is that, you know, they wrote this song about him. But how could they? He says, how could I? You know, at best I was thinking about Yoko or Sean or you know, the other guys in the band. I wasn't thinking of you.
You're watching this kid have like this very bizarre moment in his life. And I can't imagine how strange that would be to have John Lennon talking to you, like, just at all in general. But
that didn't break him out of it. That's what hit me about it. It didn't break him out of it, because once you're in that, like when you were in that state, when you were in that garage, I mean, even if, you know, Alice Cooper had walked up to you and said, you know, Dick Cheney is following you or isn't following you, it wouldn't almost matter, because whatever you are believing is already crystallized in your head. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to explain, because that's where you end up grandiose, or you end up quite arrogant with it. You know, no, I'm telling you, this is how it is. That's how I was, you know, like the fucking moon's gone. Mm-hmm. What are you gonna do now? COVID, the moon's gone. What next? You know,
something really interesting that I read somewhere a while ago is that people who are delusional tend to be also having symptoms of grandiosity, because like you think that you're important enough that there would be all these government agencies monitoring you for essentially no reason. Like, why would you think that you're that noteworthy that you would have all of these people concentrating around you and trying to follow you and stuff? So I always thought that was interesting, how even though it's like a feeling of persecution, it's also a feeling of related to grandiosity at the same time. I thought that overlap was really interesting.
But the same with me. Why wasn't everyone in their gardens going, where's the fucking moon gone? The moon's gone. Why wasn't it on the news? You know, 9 o'clock news, the moon has disappeared. You know, I discovered it. I'd realized it. I'd seen that the moon was gone, and I needed to tell everyone, and started texting people, the fucking moon's gone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they're obviously going, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's just on a cycle of the moon. You can't see it at the moment. It's there, but it's, you know, there's not enough light on it from the reflection of the sun.
Yeah, and it's like it's very basic science too. It's like, it's a very easy thing to Google, and then you can just find out, oh yeah, there's moon cycles. I forgot that there were moon cycles right now.
I Googled it, but it didn't make any difference to me.
You're just like, yeah, Google's wrong.
Yeah, but it was more like, it wasn't like there's agencies trying to control me, but almost like I discovered it. You know what I mean? I just need to get the information out there. It's straight. As I say, I find it fascinating, because you can't quite get that across to people. You can't. Mm-hmm. The strength of it. That's what I find fascinating. You know, that feeling inside that you're so certain, and you can't really explain it, you know, because it's happening to you. Mm-hmm. Like tripping, it's similar to tripping, but obviously without the other effects of acid.
Yeah, it's like a terrible weird trip. But one of the things when you're in that state of mind that personally throws me off a lot is when you're talking to someone and you ask them a question and they respond with like an open-ended statement. Like, for example, let's just say, I don't know, I was like in a dive bar somewhere during my road trip, and I would be like talking to someone about all these crazy thoughts on my mind. And then I would just be like, you know what I mean? And people would be like, no, what do you think? Like, what do you think that means? And
Yeah.
it would like be like they bounced it back at me, and it just gave me another opportunity to confirm my belief. Like, what do you think about that? And I would be like, well, I think I'm right, and it would solidify.
Yeah, that comes down to what I was saying before. How terrifying it is you try and confirm or deny everything through people around you, and why it's so important when you are struggling to have good people around you. I think because having the wrong people around you, like as again in your writing that I read, some of the group of friends you gravitated towards during uni were not bad people, but they were wrong people to be around for you at the time. The same as me. We were all a bunch of people who were drug abusing, mentally ill, coming from broken homes, and we all sort of stuck to each other like magnets. That's what's terrifying for me, because I think you are very open to suggestions. So if you meet the wrong person in a garage, or you are at college with the wrong people, it can unknowingly send you spiraling. I think that's what happened to me a lot. Going into the pandemic, I'd been around musicians and being around a lot of conspiratorial talk, 9/11 being an inside job, or aliens on the moon, or do you know what I mean? All the Bohemian Grove and all that shit. It never confirms and denies anything. It just says, well, you don't know, do you? Do you know what I mean? So you constantly have these conversations, and I think they say that if you believe in one conspiracy, you're probably going to believe in all of them. So if you believe Diana was killed, if you believe 9/11 was an inside job, you're more likely to believe in aliens. You're more likely to believe that, the presidents are picked by some group of people called the Illuminati who control Hollywood. You just keep stacking it up.
Yeah. All great examples, all awesome examples of delusions. And then the next part of psychosis was hallucinations, which I have a little personal example about. So that manic episode that started in January of 2015, it began with delusions, and then eventually it graduated into delusions and hallucinations.
Right.
So by spring of 2015, I was experiencing psychosis that had not just delusions, but also full-on hallucinations, which brought a whole other level of weirdness and freakiness to things. In addition to just the neurological misfirings that I had going on, I was also using alcohol really heavily. And I was also abusing prescription anti-anxiety medication. So like I had a prescription for Xanax or something, and I would just abuse those, which did not help anything. It just made my symptoms worse, naturally. And so what started happening is I was living at my parents' house at the time, and I would start seeing and hearing shadowy figures lurking around my house, like especially at night. And so it started where I would like catch something out of the corner of my eye, and turn to look, and it's gone, and you're like, what was that? And then eventually it turned into seeing like full human figures kind of like creeping around behind the trees in my backyard and stuff. And I would hear them talking, and sometimes the conversations would be just clear as day. They would say like harassing things to me. There was one night where I was on the upper floor of the house, and I thought I heard my dad speaking to a police officer in the living room. And I was hearing like this full conversation. So I walked downstairs to, get to the bottom of it. The house was completely empty. So I was like, well, maybe they're hiding in the basement. So I went into the basement with all of the lights off, and I was just walking through, like trying to, catch whoever was down there in my mind. And suddenly I turned around because I thought I heard something. And then I just heard this voice clear as day say, "This is where we sleep." Like just the way I'm talking to you right now. And it was really fucking scary.
Right.
So those are the types of hallucinations that I've had in the past, seeing things, hearing things that aren't there. I've never smelled things that aren't there like you have, but that's another thing that can happen.
I didn't realize it was part of it, the smelling. The one I had was seeing signs and symbols. Like I get into anagrams and stuff. So when I got prescribed risperidone, I worked out the anagram of risperidone is prisoner die. So I decided I was a prisoner and that they were trying to kill me. So the psycho, and he was fucking with me by giving me this anagrammed medication. So it was almost like he went, give him some prisoner die, because we got him locked in the house because of COVID, but we're going to kill him now. And the other thing is sort of like visual disturbances of like I'd see tiles with numbers. So the bathroom tiles would have numbers and I could read them. And the only full-blown two hallucinations I had at that time was my partner's face went evil, like just turned evil, like a horror film, evil, and scared the shit out of me. So much so that I reacted. We were sat in bed and I looked at her and it just all of a sudden her face went. And then around that period, we were walking down and walking around the park, and I looked up at the trees and I saw what looked like giant spider webs. And then I looked and I thought that must be for the giant spiders. And there was like no, again, like with the moon, there was no doubt. I was just like, well, that's where the giant spiders live. And didn't really say anything to her because, I don't know, it just seemed obvious. Do you know what I mean? There's giant spiders in the park. So not so much what you experience with the people, but I have had that sort of out the corner of your eyes things on the floor, insects, creatures, whatever. But
yeah, it's so disorienting and weird too when you have something that's that realistic happen, or that seems that realistic happening. There's periods in my memory where I can remember like the progression of the hallucinations and how they got worse and things like that. But then I have like these missing pieces of the timeline where like there's like several week-long periods of time where I simply cannot reconstruct what was happening or what was going on, because it was such a disconnect from reality that I guess my mind to this day cannot repiece it together in any sort of way that makes sense.
yeah, I get that. Yeah, when I'd written down stuff and I read it back and it just makes no sense. Like plots for films that I think are a brilliant idea that I'm going to send off to Hollywood, and just completely detached from reality. Well, from this reality, but complete in of itself. So that's what I mean. It's got a feeling to it. It's like got a smell. It's got a feeling. It's got, and I hate to say it, for me, there was something like that last time I was psychotic. There was something enjoyable. I don't know if that's because of the mayhem with COVID going on. I sort of insulated myself from it in this fantasy world where I knew the moon was gone and there was giant spiders in the park and a smell of burning that I quite enjoyed. Or whether sometimes it can be and sometimes it can be terrifying. I mean, I've had other times where I've been psychotic and it's terrifying at the same time. But yeah, more using drugs. I think more times when I've used drugs and I've completely detached is really when I've struggled.
So speaking of drugs, one of the other topics that we had on the schedule was cannabis and bipolar disorder. And I was wondering if you would like to introduce that topic or what your thoughts on that are.
Difficult one for me, cannabis. So I've smoked cannabis my entire life from about 13. Never had a break from it, even though I went into rehab for booze and pharmaceutical drugs and came clean from them, and also had problems with coke, but gave it up as well.
Yeah.
Very easily on my own without intervention. About a 6-month period where I was abusing coke. But weed I've always used, but up until recently, and then about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, it just was making me feel anxious as hell. I think I told myself it was helping. I was taking weed oil and I was smoking weed, and it was toning down the top end of the manic phase, I would imagine. But it got to the point where just even one drag of a joint would send me into an almost panic attack. So now I've quit it. So first time ever in 40 odd, no, how many years? 30 odd years, 35 years, something like that. I haven't smoked weed, and I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what you say. Really, do you use it to self-medicate, or do you like weed, or?
I don't really, I guess I partially use it to self-medicate because I historically have used it. Well, okay, so let me put it this way. So I started smoking weed on a pretty regular basis when I was 16, and I continued using weed for up until I was about 21 years old. And then that's when I first got sober at age 22. And for the first 3 years of my recovery, I didn't use like any substances at all. But I was having like terrible anxiety. So one of my psychiatrists prescribed Klonopin, which I took as prescribed. I wasn't abusing it. But Klonopin is so addictive and you build such a tolerance to it that I didn't feel comfortable continuing to use Klonopin on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I sort of talked to my doctor about it, but at the time, marijuana was still fully illegal in the state of Virginia. So I wasn't able to get like an actual medical prescription, but I started driving into Washington, D.C., which is right across the river from where I live. And it's really easy to get marijuana there. So I started driving to D.C. to get weed, and I replaced the Klonopin with marijuana. And I started using it for its anxiety relieving effects and for like sleep and appetite.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a recreational component to it as well these days. I don't drink or use like hard drugs anymore. I haven't for almost 6 years now, but I do still use marijuana. And it works well for me personally, but I've got some statistics or some research here that I pulled up before the show. And so here's the thing with like the actual scientific research right now. Some studies are showing that it's relatively safe and can help with things like insomnia and anxiety and stress relief and things like that. But then other studies are saying that cannabis use can actually trigger manic and psychotic symptoms, which I've subjectively seen with other people who I know. Like I know people, this friend of mine, like she used to be fine with weed, and then nowadays it's like if she does one hit of a bowl, it just throws her into a panic attack. So she can't use it anymore. So definitely different strokes for different folks. There was one study that I found from 2017 by a researcher named Susan Stoner, which I thought was funny. Her research suggests that marijuana use is actually correlated with higher suicide risk too. Studies have shown that people's genetics are what makes marijuana impact them differently in certain contexts.
It can give you intrusive thoughts. That's why I started noticing when I wanted to give up. It was straight away taking my mind from being quite quiet because of the meds I'm on to this noise, and some of that noise was negative. So that's what I just had to stop it for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get intrusive thoughts when they're on weed, probably even if they're mentally healthy people.
Yeah.
But what I find when I'm high on marijuana is not so much intrusive thoughts as it is ruminating thoughts. Like I'll get a thought or idea or memory stuck in my head, and I just can't stop thinking about it. Definitely. So yeah, sometimes that happens. But
yeah, definitely. See, what I've done to come off it, I bought some CBD only weed.
Mm-hmm.
So weed you can buy legally in Europe and UK, and it's the hemp plant, so it's not marijuana. So it's got I think like 13% CBD and a very, very low level of THC. It's got hardly any THC in it, so it's legal in this country. And because I like the flavor of weed when I smoke. That doesn't have any psychoactive components, so it'd be interesting. I think it's probably people needing to do research on it, really. When it becomes legal in this country, they'll probably do more research, but I think the THC in it is what doesn't agree with me.
Yeah. Do you get overall good effects from the CBD? Do you think it makes a noticeable difference?
I can't tell because the other meds I'm on, and I'm like on a roller coaster with meds at the moment. Like I said, I've just, I'm trying to scale back the buspirone because I think it's giving me nightmares. So I was taking CBD oil, and then I happened to come upon this forum and saw that you can order this CBD weed, and it's perfectly, you'll get it posted here. So I thought I'd try it just to try and wean myself off because I was quite a heavy cannabis user. I could have the taste of it, and you get all the different strains, all the same sort of haze and all the rest of it. So I got a very small amount. I got about 3 grams of it sent for about 20 quid, about $40. But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to tell you when I'm not doing it anymore, when I run out of it, because I'm not planning on buying anymore. I'm trying to give up smoking, full stop. I don't know. I think that there must be something in it that people like me or you crave. Then I think it's a double-edged sword. Like you say, your friend who now, if she has one bowl or one hit of it, is having a panic attack. That's me now. I mean, I can't deal with it.
Yeah, I really wonder how and why that switch flips like that. I do, I've got mostly good experience, a mostly good relationship with weed these days, but sometimes it does get weird. I've always told my psychiatrists who I work with that I use marijuana, and some of them say that it's bad, others are ambivalent about it. My current psychiatrist, he doesn't necessarily encourage it, but he doesn't discourage it either. So I don't know. I think it's a real mixed bag right now, and there needs to be more research about it.
I think it's a hard one because it can obviously send you into a space that isn't very good, paranoid or what have you, just with one hit of it. And I've seen that with people who don't suffer with mental health. They have a strong reaction to it, and they're gone. Particularly with eating it, I know people. It has a much stronger effect. I don't know. For me, and my advice to people would be, I wouldn't be self-medicating with it if you think you have a mental health problem, because it's dangerous, and it has been for me, But that's not going to make any difference, because if you get, it's all dealing with symptoms, isn't it? If you're not sleeping, you're not eating, and you have a joint, you sleep and eat, then that is better than not sleeping or eating. So it's hard to be black and white about it, really, I think.
Yeah, it seems like like I was saying, a pretty mixed bag, and it's a pretty controversial area right now. I know just from my peers who are bipolar, everyone seems to have a different opinion about it. Some people say, absolutely not. Other people say it's fine. For me, it's been fine. That doesn't mean that it would be fine for you or someone else. I think it's kind of one of those things where, like, if you are bipolar and you're on the fence about it and you don't have any experience with it, maybe it would be best just to leave it alone unless you're working with like a physician who says that it might be a good idea or whatever.
It's like with the meds though, isn't it? It's almost like another form of medication, isn't it? It's like when we started at the beginning of this, you said, and I said I'd scaled off my buspirone, and you said, well, have you done that with the physician's approval? And I was like, yeah. I think, if you could get to a point where physicians are administering it and they know what they're doing, and you can be honest about it, I think it may have some good effects. I mean, it definitely kept me tapered down when I was psychotic. But once that wore off and I entered a period of anxiety and depression, it was a big no for me. I mean, as I say, I was having pure panic, even from a couple of pulls of a joint. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Right. It's strange, as I say, because I don't know what flipped that switch. I don't know whether it's the meds I'm on or whether it's a state of mind I'm in. But I think probably in countries where it's legal and you can get people to actually guide you through it, it might be something that would be useful. But it's a difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also really hard if you're in an area where it's still illegal because you don't know the strength of the strains, you don't know exactly what the strains are, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly, all that, yeah.
Something that I always mention when it comes to marijuana is that all medications have side effects. There's a lot of antidepressants that can cause suicidal thoughts for some people. So it's like with everything, and especially with bipolar disorder, where I'm sorry, I keep calling it a disease, but I think the proper term for it is a disorder, technically. But anyway, with this disorder, there's so much that is so subjective and varies from each person that, you know, it's going to work for some, just like some traditional medications work well for some, and then others don't. Others have bad side effects, you know. So I'm not sure if that's exactly the best way to look at it, but that's how I look at it.
It definitely makes you feel diseased, though, doesn't it? It makes you feel ill at ease, doesn't it? Bipolar. That's why I think you probably head towards saying disorder seems like a malfunction, but it doesn't feel like a malfunction. It just feels like you're ill at ease with where you're thinking. And yeah, you were mentioning when we were speaking before, you were saying you changed your meds.
Yeah.
Did you do that yourself, or did you?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and thank you for bringing that up. So I with my doctor, under his guidance, recently reduced my mood stabilizer, which is Lamictal, because I'd been at a very high dose of Lamictal for a long time, and my goal is to start moving away from medication. Not completely, but I do want to reduce some of the meds that I'm on. So the first one we started with was Lamictal, which is also called lamotrigine, because I felt like it was causing brain fog, and I've felt like that for a really long time, that it was just causing me to have difficulty concentrating.
How did you isolate that it was that one that was causing that, though, Hunter?
It's, you know, that's such a good question. And to be honest with you, I'm still not positive if it was the lamotrigine, but I did some research and I found that brain fog is a common side effect of lamotrigine, but not of the other medications that I'm taking. So that's why I originally suspected it. And my doctor felt the same way. So anyway, we reduced the dosage from 300 milligrams to 200 milligrams. And what happened, this was about 3 weeks ago. So what happened is I felt fine for about a week, and then I actually experienced hypomania for a few days. And it was the most significant hypomanic episode I've had in several years. You know, I was like not sleeping. I felt very energetic. I was super productive, both at my day job and on my moonlight projects. I finished working on a bunch of creative projects over just the course of a couple of days. I got a ton of work done at my day job. So it was productive, but I think last Friday night, it was like I just slammed into a wall. And suddenly I lost all of my energy and all of my motivation. And it was I basically had a couple of days of, I wouldn't say bad, but it was a depression, you know? And I was kind of clawing my way out of it earlier this week, and I'm feeling better now. But I think it's going to keep taking some time for my body to adjust to the lower dosage. And worst case scenario is if another situation like that happens, I am probably going to have to go back on the old dose that I was taking, which I don't want to do, but you know, there's pros and cons to everything.
But isn't it managing your behavior? Because obviously if you're taking something you know is causing brain fog, which is sort of depression, or sort of cloudiness, and you leave that off, you are going to have more energy. So therefore it's almost like taking the dog off the leash, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's almost like you've got to have some self-control. I'm not saying you don't have self-control, but it's almost you got to have some moderation in your behavior yourself without that chemical moderation, surely. Because you seem less medicated this time speaking to you than last time. You seem more animated facially. You seem more Yeah, I don't know whether it's because we spoke more now or because of the medication, but you don't seem as
Morose.
yeah, well, it does make it. That's what I was saying with the Buspirone. You could, because that's why I asked you, how did you tell which one it was? It's because you do a bit of Googling, don't you? But you also sort of know, because with risperidone really didn't do anything apart from stop me being manic. But once I added the Buspirone in, I could feel like, my sex drive dropped off. I feel depressed. I feel sort of muted. Do you know what I mean? Just sort of like I can't be asked with being asked. I don't know. And as I've sort of scaled the dose back this last week, well, last few days, only 2 or 3 days, even 2 or 3 days in, I feel more awake. But it's hard, isn't it? Because you don't want to mess with it when it's working for so long and it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
I want to come off meds. That's what I want. Ultimately, I want to get to a point where I can control my behavior with the least medication in my system as possible.
Yeah, it's really hard when it comes down to neurology and chemical imbalances and your brain at the end of the day, because you can control some of those behaviors and activities through, different types of therapeutic techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever. But sometimes there does need to be that pharmaceutical intervention, especially for bipolar type 1. But yeah, I don't know. I had just been stable for so long that I was feeling confident in coming down off of some of those medications. And now it's something that I'm realizing that I have to monitor very, very carefully. And, I'm going to talk to my doctor about it some more next week. And I hope that I can continue trying this lower dose for the next, couple of months, see if it works out in the long run.
Well, isn't it hard to tell what's hypermanic and what's just not feeling so affected by the drug? Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying you weren't hypermanic. What I'm saying is it's always hard to judge, like I was saying with the weed thing before. It's like it's hard to judge what's doing what. Do you know what I mean? Especially when you've been in a situation where you come from quite dark psychosis and mania and all the things go with it, and then you do get a sort of slightly stable, but that stableness can sometimes be illness in itself, if you like. Do you know what I mean? It's like that isn't optimal. That's what I feel anyway. I feel like, the medications will do a job. Like I was using weed for a certain while to do a job, and the same as I've been using Buspirone or Buspar to sort of manage my anxiety. Now the anxiety's gone, I want to see if I can deal with it.
Do you mean like if you have like a baseline state that's already kind of negative to begin with?
Yeah, so
like taking yourself off of a medication gets you back to your baseline.
What's normal?
Yeah, and then like if normal is shitty, then getting back to normal is not always the most ideal thing.
Then you have better coping strategies, don't you? Obviously, if you're aware you're becoming hypermanic, then you have to have the self-control to go to sleep, not do too much work, not stay up late, to make sure you eat, to make, because sleeping is a big thing with people like us, is that once we get into that habit of not sleeping, before you know it, the moon's gone or you're in Texas, and
that's something that my therapist and I were actually talking about earlier this week, is that with the reduced medication, you do have to have more self-discipline with those other coping strategies and stay on top of them.
That's what because once I cut the Buspirone down, I don't know whether it's in my head that I'm going to feel more anxious, but the next day I started to feel anxious again. And the thing to think then is, I need the tablet. But luckily, I think I'm willing to give it a few days on things. Do you know what I mean? I just see how it goes for now, and as long as it's with the doctor's agreement, then we're all right.
Yeah, and a lot of these medications, they take weeks to fully come into effect in your system,
and to leave your system as well, don't they?
Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now, is like, I don't know if these are it's just still my body adjusting because the dosage was changed so recently, or if it's foreshadowing something else, which I hope that it's not, but I do have to be realistic.
But you're always going to think that it's foreshadowing something else because you've been in such a dark place. And that's the same with, you know, like the anxiety that I had a couple of months ago, out of all the feelings, out of being psychotic, being depressed, or being anxious, the anxiety was the worst. The depression I can see as a symptom of an illness, and I can, although it's hard to live in it, it comes and goes. And I can use, you know, like today I baked a cake, you know, just I didn't want to bake a cake, and, you know, I really
That's
didn't,
awesome.
but I baked the cake, you know, to sort of give my mind something to do. But the anxiety is something I don't want to go back to. And I think when you've been using a med to deal with something, there's a fear of that thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have to have other coping strategies in place, which, I mean, I'm slowly learning.
Well, baking a cake is a great coping strategy. I mean, cooking, gardening, music, whatever. These are all good things to.
It was my second attempt because I tried to bake a cake 4 days ago, and it's the first time I've ever burnt something that was raw. So it was burnt on the fucking outside. So I took it out because it was burning. And then as I took it out of the cake thing, it just was liquid. So I managed to both burn it and make it raw at the same time. So wow. This was the second attempt today, and I managed to do it. But
congratulations, man.
Thank you. I'll be having a piece of cake after we finished here.
Sounds perfect. Speaking of which, we've been going for a little over an hour. I know you said you've got an hour.
Yeah.
Do we need to stop, or did you have anything else that was on your mind?
I don't know. I think we talked about most of the things we wanted to talk about, haven't we? I think the thing for me that was interesting, that the similarities, as I say, because since I last spoke to you, I've read your book, and I'm sort of nearly halfway through it now. The similarities of our pathway, you know, of feeling the odd one out, being in school, and then having this psychotic break in my 20s, where you were as well. But I mean, I carried on after that. I think what's interesting for me is that you've managed to find some stability earlier on, because I think I rode it out for a long time without any help.
Yeah, the only reason I was able to find stability early on is because I crashed and burned so hard, you know, and coming out of that, I'm very, very fortunate in that I was able to, you know, kind of get my shit together relatively quickly after I crashed and burned, after that manic episode in the spring of 2015. I was able to rebound pretty quickly compared to other people. And I don't think that makes me like better than anyone. It's just kind of a weird difference in my own journey with this illness. So like my recovery time between when I was released from the hospital and once I started to really feel better was about 8 months, I guess. Right. And that came with starting a full-time job that was structured and that was, you know, like a real white collar job that I had to be on point for.
Yeah.
You know, and then a couple of months after starting that job, you know, I quit drinking, which was huge. And then after that, just a few weeks after I stopped drinking, I started seeing a proper psychiatrist again. And then I got on medication, and then I started doing therapy again. So that's kind of how that came to be. But that type of recovery process is definitely something that varies a lot from person to person. And I've still had major struggles with bipolar disorder. You know, I've had psychotic depression since then. Like I was saying, you know, I just had this little hypomanic incident just a couple of weeks ago. So
yeah,
it's still a struggle. But I do feel like I've been relatively stable for a pretty good amount of time now.
It's asking for help, isn't it, Hunter? That's the hardest bit. I think having family or friends around you that you can ask for help. I mean, for me, I didn't have a stable job, and I think that's what caused a lot of problems. I think being in music and trying to make it in music constantly, and the thing with music is you never ever you're never ever there. Once you get there, there's somewhere else to get, and that was the problem for me, and it just fed into my illness, and I think that's where I missed out. I think I knew I needed stability and I needed something structured, but I shied away from it and went towards music. And
yeah,
it's a chaotic game, and I think that's where you've done the right thing by asking for help. And obviously, I get the impression your family are somewhat supportive to you, and they've helped out either when you wanted it or didn't want it.
Well, they helped me not become homeless, which is huge. And yeah, they've been supportive in their own way. Sometimes their support was not for the best, other times it was for the best. So yeah, my family and I these days get along very well, and they are very supportive.
We got you to here, didn't it, bud? We got you to here and where you are now. So, and as I say, that's the main thing. Yeah, but that's all I had to say, really, Hunter. It was really, about those things, and hoping that it's of help to other people, because that's the one thing that I've been struggling with, finding other people that are going through the same thing, because I'm very much a person that wants to sort it out on my own, and I'm learning more and more I can't, and that's part of speaking to you and speaking to other people on Twitter and speaking to psychiatrists and speaking to my partner. And just trying to find some stability.
Talking with other people who have been through similar things is definitely huge. Just really quickly, have you checked out any group therapy or like peer support groups or anything?
I have. I was going to, during the height of the pandemic, I was looking at joining one, but I'm just so nervous about leaving the house with the whole. I did group therapy when I was in rehab, of course, when I was in rehab for alcohol and Valium and that. But no, it's something I want to, but I'm not really at the point where I'll leave the house and walk into a crowded room just yet. I'm still, and the case numbers are shooting up in the UK, so we're in pretty dire circumstances as far as COVID goes at the moment.
Do they not have virtual?
Well, they did. They were all virtual, and then they went back to face-to-face.
Oh, weird.
And because, as I say, the measures in the UK have completely been lifted now, thanks to our fucking stupid government. It's all face-to-face stuff. But it's something I want to. I would have done a virtual one now. I just don't think I was at the point where I thought I had something wrong when I first got given the helpline number and the group therapy details, and B, where I thought I could add anything to it. But no, now it's definitely something I'd look at.
Cool. Well, I hope that you are able to find something, because I've found that peer support groups can be pretty helpful, for sure. So
it's been helpful speaking to you, Hunter.
Thank you, sir.
No, and as I say, reading your book, I'm finding it hard to focus. So when I do focus, I either write a little bit of my stuff, or I've been reading your book and using Twitter a bit, but that doesn't help with your concentration. Twitter.
Well, I am honored and humbled that you think that these conversations have been helpful, and they've been helpful for me too, because I always love hearing other people's perspectives on things and hearing where other people are at on their journeys with bipolar and other mental illness. So
nice one, bud. Anyway, I think that's a good point to end.
Yeah, I agree. Let's turn off this recording. Right. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of Bipolar Recorder. We are on Twitter at Bipolar Recorder. I am on Twitter at HHKeegan. If you have any feedback about the show or you'd like to get involved, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. I also just wanted to quickly remind everyone, if you've been enjoying this show, make sure you tell your friends about it. Post about it on social media, help get the word out. It's all very, very deeply appreciated. And that's all I've got for right now. So anyhow, thank you again for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are. and I hope you'll be back for the next installment. Thanks so much. Bipolar Recorder is a listener-supported show. To help keep the show running, consider checking out our Patreon page or visiting bipolarrecorder.com.
Unless otherwise stated, the hosts and guests on Bipolar Recorder are not licensed mental health professionals. Bipolar Recorder is not a substitute for therapy or professional medical intervention. If you are having a mental health crisis, please contact your local emergency services.